Hello, my name is Sacha and I work in museums and I build and design escape rooms. I am also dyspraxic. So dyspraxia is a disorder of fine motor control and coordination. What this means I often get labelled as is clumsy. And in many sense I am clumsy in that I fit all those descriptions. I knock things over, I have accidents, I break things probably a lot more than most people do, and I have always done so. I have very poor coordination, so I'm very likely to trip over or have an accident seemingly from nowhere. I can trip over my own feet. I also have a strange walk, what is described as an awkward gait. So basically I bounce a lot when I'm walking. That's partly because my balance isn't fantastic, and so I'm kind of over-exaggerating, which means that people can kind of find that quite comedic. There are other things like when I'm dancing, you'll probably always notice me because I have some very interesting moves, partly because I don't always know exactly what I look like or where my hands and arms are. My sense of timing is pretty much non-existent. So I grew up with this label, clumsy, and when I then got the diagnosis of dyspraxia, as I got a bit older and I would talk about my dyspraxia, some people would think it was very funny to say how this was just middle class for clumsy, that somehow I was just clumsy and I was making a big deal out of it by medicalising it. Now, what I've picked as my object is actually a study. It's called The Clumsy Child, a study of developmental apraxic and agnosic ataxia, 1975. Now, I picked this because the title Clumsy Child, this reminds me so much of what my mum would say to me, meaning well, but just being so frustrated because her son was constantly getting into scrapes and breaking things. And here's the difficult thing, when you have something like dyspraxia, or if you're neurodivergent, and sometimes your body and brain, they don't operate the same way that they do for a lot of people. What people see is an awkwardness, or in my case, they will see me break things, valuable things, or lose things, or do stuff that seems really negligent and thoughtless, without realising, I believe, that I am putting more thought into all of my actions, because I'm aware of this about myself, than anybody else. I am working so hard as a dyspraxic not to be clumsy. And still, sometimes I will be clumsy. And when I break the thing, it is not intentional. It's not because I am being willfully bad. So I used to be called a clumsy child by my mum, and I would try to stop being a clumsy child, and guess what? I'm a clumsy adult today. I've learned some strategies. There are things that you learn when you're neurodivergent to cope in a world that sometimes doesn't fully understand how your brain operates, which can be a little bit different. But there is also something to be said for, rather than just pathologizing and medicalizing people whose brains work a bit differently, maybe we need to change society a little bit in how we understand how some people's operate differently. Like, for example, I really struggle with lots of instructions of what to do. If it's like a physical thing, following recipes or doing a dance or choreography is something I find really difficult. At school, there are a lot of tasks that you're told to do this, and teachers and people would get frustrated with me because I couldn't really do it, without trying to understand that maybe I wasn't failing, maybe I wasn't bad or just daydreaming, maybe this wasn't the best way for me to work. So this particular article, The Clumsy Child, it makes me think, one, about being a clumsy child, two, the language we use to describe what we see in neurodivergent people, and three, how sometimes it's not those people that need to change, it's also society that needs to develop to understand them better.